Final Fantasy XVI demo is here, and it is tremendous. I recommend everyone play it if they haven't done so already. Come back to this video so you and I can talk about the things we loved about it. Because I really could not find any fault in it, with probably the only exception being the Eikon battles, really just being kind of glorified QTEs, but that's just the tip of it. Because really it was just Ifrit and Phoenix, and they're probably going to be more elaborate as we go along. But it was really just kind of one giant QTE, one big cinematic that you can interact with. That's cool. I still loved it because Final Fantasy XVI is a spectacle. One of the things that you're going to notice right off the bat is just how dark and grim Final Fantasy is. And believe me, it's been a long time coming. This series has always had moments of darkness. See Kefka from Final Fantasy VI. But it's never really had that sustained grim feel to it. But 16 is going to be dark. You can see it right off the bat, especially in some of these cutscenes. They are not pulling punches. And the final 40 minutes of the demo is some of the darkest things I have ever seen in Final Fantasy, and also in some games in general. I literally had my jaw drop when Brad had told me that there was a section that will probably convince me to buy this game almost immediately afterwards. He was not lying. I immediately pre-ordered the moment we got past that section. I was like, that right there, that's good shit. And that's exactly how I feel about 16 moving forward. It is just one of these games that I feel like is going to be remembered as a landmark Final Fantasy title because it takes the series in a new direction. And it's bold. And listen, I know that there are going to be some people who are going to be against it, but I'm telling you right now, the series is going to be all better for it because it's about time we got a mature and adult Final Fantasy. This is going to be said a lot, especially when all the reviews start dropping and people just generally talk about this game. But Final Fantasy 16 is beautiful. It is a visual splendor. And one of the things that I love is that the developers said, okay, how do we grab people's attention right off the bat? How about we have two icons fight one another? Okay, cool, right? It's a really quick introduction to how these battles will go. And then afterwards, we're going to show Clive. And Clive his detail is excellent. I love the way he looks. I love his design. The hair in this game, by the way, fantastic. I just can't, for some reason, I just see people's hair and I'm like, that looks good. That looks damn good. And then we're going to have Shiva and Titan fight one another. Oh, and it's going to look amazing. And they're going to fight one another while there's a little skirmish going on. While two warring states are pretty much fighting one another and killing one another on the ground. It's this really graphic, brutal battle. But we're going to have Titan and Shiva fight one another in this amazing looking fight. That you know, based off all of these different trailers you've seen, you're eventually going to control another icon and you're going to fight Titan. And you're going to fight Shiva or fight with Shiva. And it's going to be amazing. Like, this game just blows my mind in regard to all of the little details. It's truly fantastic, and it's a great reason to own a PS5. Seriously, I was blown away when looking at that. And that's going to be said everywhere. But I just wanted to mention it here because, listen, look at all this. This is insane. And the best part about this is that this is just like the first 30 minutes of the game. Can you imagine what the rest of this game is going to hold for you? In 2 hours, you get to see multiple icons. You get to have these really big, fun battles. You get to utilize a bunch of different abilities. If you play the Icon Challenge, which I recommend everyone do almost immediately after the 2 hours of the demo are done, play that and just literally be in awe of some of the things that are happening on screen. I also love, by the way, the enemy design. I love the way the creatures look. We're kind of moving past all that really cute stuff, right? Except for Torgal. Torgal is adorable. But when we're pushing into some of the goblin design and just how ugly they look and how grimy they look, you're like, yeah, I want to beat the shit out of that. That's just my opinion on it. And I really love the fact that the developers really embraced that dark fantasy aspect of it. This section is going to be short, but shout out to the devs for including the active time lore. I love this. I am so bad with names at times. I am so bad with locations, and this really helps me learn. I made fun of Brad about this and called this some really nerd shit, but I'm going to be real. I really love this nerd shit. It's fantastic. Let's talk about the combat, and this is going to be a lengthy conversation because this is obviously one of the central features of this game, is that gone are the turn-based JRPG traditions, and in it is an action RPG game. Think of like The Witcher, but The Witcher did not have hands like this. Seriously. The Witcher was a serviceable action game. You played it more for its story elements and its deep crafting and stuff like that. And in Final Fantasy XVI, it really feels like Devil May Cry mixed with a Platinum game like Nier Automata. And guess what? The combat director worked on Devil May Cry 5 and Dragon's Dogma, and Platinum Games directly assisted with development of Final Fantasy XVI. So it's why the combat is the way it is. And I get it. If you're a purist and you have played this series since Final Fantasy 1, you are more than likely going to be upset at the fact that there is no turn-based mode. Even Final Fantasy VII Remake, with its very hands-on and capable battle system, had a turn-based mode for the purists out there. But this game does not. You do not slow down time. It is all gas. And I have to say, it's a lot of fun. I think you're going to notice that Final Fantasy XVI has this really offensive-minded approach to its combat. And in the tutorial section, you get to learn how to slash and throw magic. But then when you start to learn how to dodge, almost immediately it's like, you're going to dodge and you're going to counterattack quickly. You're going to work on that perfect dodge, and you're going to immediately strike and break into a combo. And a lot of the abilities that you have in your skill tree really emphasize offensive attacks. You're going to jump off enemies and attack them. You have your own lunge ability, which is really just the stinger attack, which I love the fact that they worked on Devil May Cry and they gave you a stinger, which is a fun follow-up. You have charge abilities for your blade in which you can light it on fire, strike the ground, and juggle enemies. The emphasis on offensive combat makes you feel powerful, makes you feel capable, and lets you know right off the bat that this game is going to be very cinematic, especially when it comes to the quality of action on screen. Some of the special abilities that Clyde has that are like emphasized by his icon or reinforced by his icon, they're just insane looking, especially when you start to like knock down an enemy and you kind of pop them up and you're just like, Jesus, the damage on that was insane. Especially because with Phoenix, you kind of throw out this flame wing and it knocks him square in the air. And from there, if you want, you can hold down triangle and then shoot a really powerful projectile at him and just blow him out of the air. And then you can walk up and you can stab him on the ground for heavy damage. I mean, this game really wants you to take it to the enemy. Because the moment they go into their little attacks and you're able to get that perfect dodge the first time, you can run that perfect dodge multiple times, but it's literally rewarding the player for playing offensive, for using the mechanics as they're intended. And here's the thing. If you're not impressed by the combat in the opening hours of Final Fantasy XVI, don't worry, because after you complete that story demo, you can then go into the Eikon challenge, which will show you just how capable Clive can be, because you will then have the ability to switch between multiple icons. And each of these icons have their special abilities that's mapped to R2. And what's great about this is that they each have their own cooldowns. So they're not reliant on one another. So technically, if you go and use up the Phoenix icon special abilities, you can then switch to Garuda and then switch to Titan. And then by the time you get back to Phoenix, the cooldown's already over. And you can consistently chain that combo. You can clear rooms of enemies because they will throw just lines of them at you. And my favorite thing is like when you complete like an entire section of enemies and there's like new enemies have appeared. I don't care about that, because all that means is that there's new victims for me to abuse and beat the hell out of. And seriously, you will go in there and as you're switching up abilities, you're just massacring them. And it's so much fun because then you'll also have access to Torgal. And Torgal will lunge himself at enemies, and you can control this if you want, but there is an item that they'll give you that you can equip in which Torgal will automatically target the foe you're targeting and will actually commit actions. So instead of you having to worry about what Torgal's going to do, let's say you're getting too deep into the combat and you're saying to yourself, like, I don't know how I'm going to manage his abilities while managing mine during the heat of combat, that's fine. You can utilize this small equipable item and it'll have Torgal do these things for you. And I'm telling you, it's just so much fun watching your hound absolutely body people. The midair juggles, throwing them down, just swiping at them. Torgal is amazing and a real highlight of this demo. Another major highlight from the demo were the boss fights. I loved them. I thought these were, outside of the tutorial ones, even though the Marlboro fight, it was still really fun. I really feel like when you got to fight the Dragoon and you got to see its introduction and you were just sitting there like, that's badass. I want to be that. Even though you're probably not going to have a jump ability, but if we do get that type of jump ability, that would be fantastic. But regardless, that fight was pretty epic, especially considering Clive's age. He's this teenager. He just went through and killed a group of enemies prior to that, and the Dragoon just comes diving straight down. And what I love about the boss fights in this game is that there's all these cinematic events. And I really like the fact that these cinematic events, especially if you feel like the combat can get spongy, what they do is that they allow you to stagger enemies almost automatically. And then from there, you can then follow up with some pretty devastating attacks. In the Eikon challenge section of the demo, because you are far more capable, I feel like the bosses there were so much more fun to fight because they weren't as spongy, because of just the damage output from Clive. What was insane was that the dual Garuda fight was brutal because I was just lighting them up and staggering them pretty quickly, especially considering that you can go into this limit break mode in which Clive is practically unstoppable. You recover a ton of health, you do a lot of damage, and always just use that limit break ability in conjunction with your bigger combos and your special Eikon abilities, and you will just absolutely eviscerate and walk through it. I was thinking that some of these fights would probably be like 5 to 10 minutes. And that was primarily because I thought they would be really spongy. These are boss enemies, and staggering would probably take some time. But using all of your abilities in conjunction with one another, nah. You will melt some of these bosses, and you'll immediately jump into the next phase. It's actually pretty impressive, honestly. The Bernadetta fight in particular is a real highlight, especially because it does an excellent job of showing you just how cinematic and visceral the game is going to get. Because the fight with her really shows how, while Clive is trying to learn how to be a dominant and try to learn how to control these icons, she's been doing this for a while. And she's very capable, and she's just shit-talking you. And that's something I really like, by the way. The major enemies in this game, they're so confident and so cocky in their abilities, and rightfully so. They're obviously way more experienced than Clive. But Clive is able to just kind of impress them, and then they get so mad, and they just constantly shit-talk him. And what's even, I think, better is that the moment Bernadetta knows that it's not fair because Torgal's there and Torgal's giving her shit, she immediately targets Torgal. And I thought for a second that the devs potentially killed off the dog, and I was very upset. And I was like, I'm going to beat the absolute shit out of you. And I really enjoyed that, by the way. I really liked that kind of twist where I thought, oh man, they killed the dog. But I'm like, this is just like a demo portion that's probably not in the main game. I'm probably wrong, though, because it felt like a major section of the game. You wouldn't have the type of cutscene quality here just for a demo. And if I'm wrong about that, I'm going to be very surprised. Regardless, though, I feel like the Bernadetta fight is so good because it shows you that there's levels to some of these dominants. And watching Clive just acclimate to his abilities utilize all of them, and really upset this balance that has currently been existing for, however long, is a lot of fun. That really nice balance of cinematic cutscenes and action, they do a great job of marrying the two. And you feel really involved in everything. You really can't put the controller down. And that way, it really reminds you of a Devil May Cry 5. In which, if you did put your controller down when you're going into a cutscene, you might have actually walked into a QTE, or you're like, oh shit, I was supposed to do something here. And then Dante ended up getting clapped. It feels that way with this. Like, if I'm not truly paying attention, I could lose a lot of health. So I have to keep my head on a swivel, because there are parts of this game where it's like, I just want to put my controller down and just be in awe of what's happening on screen. Because this game, like I've said before throughout this video, it's a spectacle. And it's incredibly enjoyable. Now, I know that this lengthy conversation about combat and all the mechanics and features is probably not going to persuade anybody from coming off of the fence and picking this game up because you're a turn-based enthusiast, and I understand that. I get it. Because to me, it is kind of strange that the developers would not include the option for turn-based, primarily because I don't really think it affects the cinematic quality of combat. Because just like Final Fantasy VII Remake, that game is incredibly cinematic. There's a lot of really cool stuff happening, but you can still pause time. And in 16, I really feel like they just probably thought that, look, let's make it balls to the walls, action RPG. Let's throw some quick time events in there. Let's make it as cinematic as possible. I don't want you to try to block too much. I want you to dodge, do all this type of stuff. I think it's kind of a weird decision. That's just me, though. But I understand what they're doing, because I feel like by making it action only, you are kind of cutting off some of your core audience who have stuck with you for so long. But I also feel like some of the features that have been implemented by the developers to assist you in combat can probably change your mind just a little bit. Because I really feel like this Final Fantasy has a lot to offer in regard to its narrative. The writing in this so far is really strong. I feel like the characters, by the way, fantastic. I really feel like there's that one character who I absolutely hate, and I think everyone's going to hate coming out of the demo. Just by that person's introduction alone. Just absolute despise that character. I don't even care if they have a good backstory. Fuck them. Just saying. But I really feel like that this game is going to be that bold step forward for Final Fantasy. I really hope that the mainline entries moving on take these mature, grounded themes and they push. Because this game can be brutal at times. By the time you get to the end of that story demo, you probably have to take a breath. Because while it's something that you've seen in other action games or other titles, it's probably something you've never seen before in a Final Fantasy game. And that is going to do it for this video. So, we are going to be doing a giveaway for Final Fantasy XVI. But it is going to be on the ultimate tier list video. All the details are going to be within that video. You're going to have to like that video, comment on it, subscribe. I feel like some of our choices are going to lead to some really just beautiful discourse. I feel like everyone's going to just agree with us. I'm probably wrong. I know that a lot of people are going to be very upset with where we place Final Fantasy X, but listen, it's just our opinion, so don't get offended. But we are doing a giveaway for 2 free copies of Final Fantasy XVI. If you happen to see this video first, just know that shortly after, there's going to be an upload for the ultimate tier list. Please be on the lookout for that. This will probably be the rare time where we are going to upload 2 videos in a day. I just love this demo and was compelled to make a video because it was just so much fun. And I really hope that those of you who got to play it, you enjoyed it, and you're looking forward to Final Fantasy XVI just like I am and just like Brad is. Shout out to Brad. He is a massive fan. He literally was playing this while I was at work and would not stop talking about it. And I'm not saying he spoiled some things for me, but he just kept saying, it gets dark. Oh, Ken, it gets dark. And yes, it did. And I'm happy that it does. So, I am Ken from Pixelated Thoughts. and I will talk to you next time. Have a good one, everyone.